the reason for this is there's been a lot of change to the way that our organizations work. We don't just sit at our desks anymore, we are standing, but more importantly, we are at home. We're not in the office. And our workforce, the new workforce, if you have a new employee, they're just straight out of university and they've been in 2 years in lockdown, they are digitally native. This workforce was born with iPhones, with applications, cloud applications, to make themselves, dynamic and clever and do all these cool things that allow us to be competitive, allow them to be competitive and do cool things. So on average, we use about like 1,500, it could be even more now, 2,000 different applications every single week. Cloud apps. You wouldn't have 2,000 applications on your desktop, but you'd have them in the cloud. So this is really interesting. They try and talk to your new workforce about on-premise. They don't know what that is. So that's really interesting, which means that they are using these applications, all these thousands of applications, and housing your critical information, that core business value asset that you are using, this competitive analysis, this customer databases, this intellectual property, to house your information in thousands of different siloed locations. And they're not all built the same. Some are good, some are bad, some need help. And that means also that the cyber adversary are using our inherent trust of these applications to use as exploits. Like they'll send you a link in Dropbox to say, hey, look, here's a resume, and it will contain malware that's, ultimately some ransomware. It's kind of crazy that they're using these, our trust of these as vulnerabilities to exploit in ourselves. And we still have to work from anywhere on any device as we navigate this kind of tricky world of working from home and COVID and pandemics. So it increases complexity and ultimately cost for organizations. This is a really interesting scenario. And if we look at what that means to us, we have it's all applications and users. Like our users connecting to applications to process data and do clever things. But these applications are now so varied. We have internal applications still in our data centers. We may have migrated some of those to infrastructure as a service. Some of these could be even serverless with shared workloads and containers across multiple different cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and GCP. So very, very varied even on those internal apps. Then you'll have those external third-party applications, those SaaS applications, and as I say, about 1,500 to 2,000 different applications being used every week. Our users then also is distributed across multiple different geolocations, sitting in the headquarters, maybe in those branch offices, maybe on a managed device with all of the endpoint clients that they require, maybe on a BYOD device with some endpoint clients on there so that we say, yes, that's trusted. My machine is something I bought myself, and my organization said, if you want to connect to my applications, you must install these clients, this EDR, this proxy client on here. And then you've got those work from anywhere, BYOD, those contractors who say, I have none of your applications on here, but I still need access to your application to process the data that you're requiring me to do my outcomes, do those clever things for you. So that shows how the application is the gateway to the data. It's really interesting though. And what we've done as security professionals is try and implement different distributed inspection and policy enforcement points for various different streams, sessions, and transactions, whether it's connecting to websites, whether it's connecting to the network. We've got a VPN, we've got firewalls, we've got secure gateways, and we want to do SSL inspection because everything's encrypted now. Maybe we've even got 𝗏𝗏𝗏 so we can connect to those cloud applications as well. So you've got multiple different technologies. And what we recognize is that it takes a lot of time and money and resources to assess all of these applications ourselves and to see whether or not they fit into our security program and to see whether or not they meet our requirements. Ultimately, we'll end up with some gaps. I mean, every vendor has different capabilities, right? So you want to make sure that you're going to find some gaps, and you maybe have to have another technology or write off that risk, which is no good. So That's no good. And then especially that comes with DLP, right? So you're going to end up with like data protection. Every organization's idea of what a credit card script is going to be different to another vendor's. So you spend time, money, and resources, and have got all of these gaps. And more importantly, perhaps they don't talk to each other. Like, you know, if 𝗂𝗀𝗰 was to bulk download files from her corporate OneDrive, upload them to a box, share credentials with Salesforce with another employee, I maybe might not want her to connect in via the VPN to access the internal database because her behaviors have been interesting. Instead, what we have to do is send all of these different things to a SIEM solution, and then hopefully some human being has to, you know, correlate those logs and say that is correct, that isn't correct, and then maybe change the policies afterwards. So there's a lot of distribution. You end up spending a lot of time and money and resources. It's an expense in debt. So what the industry has done and gone, well, I see that there are some consistencies here. Some of these tools are about connectivity. Where should this traffic go to, whether it's IoT, OT systems, certain branch offices have to connect to certain locations. That's fine. And then some of these tools are about access control. Should this be allowed through? Should this type of session with this type of data from this type of user be allowed through? So there's these two elements of, you know, the network as a service, the should this connect and how does it, where does this connect to? This branch office, these types of IoT systems connect to these locations. And then you have access control or security as a service capabilities. And that is really what Secure Access Service Edge is. It's about understanding that regardless of where we are located, these two things of network as a service or security as a service together as SASE, they're about connecting people and devices to our services and our data, regardless of where they're located. And that's what these two realms are talking about. So, you know, Gartner built up these new acronyms, SASE as a secure access service edge, but they contain these two components, WAN service edge and security service edge. WAN service edge is ultimately SD-WAN, but it has to provide those capabilities of WAN optimization, quality of service, routing, and content delivery. But the security of service edge is providing access control. Should this website be accessed? Should this cloud application? Should these private applications? Should these non-standard port applications be allowed access and should be accessed? And it's using those, you know, multiple different, technologies that we're aware of. So it's a convergence, a consolidation of those capabilities into a single platform. And there has been a new quadrant out in Security Service Edge. Please take a look. It's very important that you see what the third-party analysts are saying about those vendors. Let's look at it from a practical sense. You know, I can look at third-party vendors, analysts all the time, but let's look at what this means practically. You have highly distributed. What we want is we want to solve this problem, and that means rather than having distributed inspection and policy enforcement points, we're having centralized inspection and policy enforcement point for all application traffic, whether it's a SaaS application, whether it's a website, whether it's an internal application. And the best way to start is knowing that this is connecting over the internet. The vast majority of our applications and our data are now in SaaS applications over the internet. So let's do with a secure web gateway. So on that journey, the best way to start is go, well, that secure web gateway has to be connected to. It's connecting over the internet. So multiple different steering clients send all the traffic from any of those devices, wherever they are located, whether they're Windows, Mac, iOS, client, Linux. Linux is now out with Netskope, or integrations with on-premise, so GRE, IPsec, SD-WAN, proxy chaining, all that kind of stuff. It's all about it doesn't matter. Just send that traffic to one point and we do, access over the internet into SSL inspection as well. Of course, we're going to do threat. We want to make sure that we have very sophisticated anti-malware engines, looking at threat feeds from multiple different locations and sharing of IOCs. We want to use file heuristic analysis and even sandboxing in the cloud for advanced threat protection. But ultimately, we need to know that the internet is now changed. The internet has changed. It's not about connecting to Wikipedia and BBC.com. It's about connecting to our critical business services. And that means we have to have a library of all those SaaS applications that are in there. I need to have an understanding of what those SaaS applications are, what the risks are there, what are the compliance violations, etc., so that I can say this, people should be accessing these applications, they should be accessing these applications, they shouldn't be accessing these high-risk applications that hold no business value. Or maybe I'll provide coaching to say, hey, you've been using WeTransfer. This is a high-risk application. Did you know that we use OneDrive at my organization? Let's use this application instead. So having that library inline immediately allows you to get visibility into what SaaS applications your users are accessing, and provide some coaching, some education, to increase the risk maturity of your organization. Then we also want to look at the instances. The problem with that SaaS applications is, whilst there are hundreds of thousands of applications out there, we're all using the same ones. We're all using Microsoft, Google, AWS, Salesforce, ServiceNow, SurveyMonkey, MailChimp. We're all using it, and that's the problem. Every single business unit in your organization is going to be using the same applications. So I want to say that I want them to be able to collaborate with my partners, my business partners, but I may not want upload of files to that instance. I'm not going to allow downloads, but not uploads. That becomes really important. So having the ability to do that is really powerful, having the understanding. And Netskope actually looks at the APIs inline to say, that's a corporate instance, that's a personal instance, and you can have different policies based on those different instances. And then we'll look at the activities. It's not just about uploads and downloads anymore. That's very important. But what happens if somebody, a new intern, logs into OneDrive and starts deleting files? What happens if they log into SurveyMonkey and start sending out or approving marketing campaigns to my customers with really bad language, non-branded information? That's a risk, right? What happens if they log into AWS and start shutting down servers? That ability to apply activity controls, Netskope has the ability to apply I think it's about 80 different activities to your, it could be delete, edit, share, approve, shut down, reboot, etc., and then provide coaching to say, are you sure you want to shut down this server? Are you sure you want to send this information out? It becomes really powerful on those activities as well. Then we have to understand, of course, we spoke about threat, looking at malware and ransomware. Netscope also integrates the 𝗲𝗊 capabilities to say, I've got built-in classifiers for personal identifiable information, PCI, PII, PHI, but also there's a significant amount of information that requires more than just built-in information scripts around personal identifiable information. There could be screenshots. 20% of the objects uploaded and downloaded are actually images that we see across all of our customers, 20%. That's a huge amount. So we want to look at the images, we want to look at the vectors inside of there and say, that's a passport, that's a driver's license, that's a screenshot, that's a whiteboard. Somebody's taken a picture of a whiteboard and applies controls on that. And that allows you to put the governance on that on your data governance team. The controls are dictated by your governance team as opposed to your users. That the user doesn't know, they're just doing their job and trying to be competitive. But we know from a security perspective that these files shouldn't be allowed out to the non-corporate instances. And that's great because you actually start to integrate that instance control and say anything going to the corporate instance, absolutely okay. But if it's a personal instance, nothing can go out. And if it's partner instances, certain files can go out. That granularity becomes super important. We also have the ability to do fingerprinting of files. So that could be, I've got certain files, forms, COVID consent form. I want to come in the office. Here's my information. Let's fingerprint the form. And then if I see similar forms that have been filled in, they too can't go to a non-corporate instance. And we're going to do that across web, SaaS, IaaS, and even email as well. I'll talk about that later. We're going to expand this out to now cloud firewalls, so all ports and protocols. It means if I spin up Tor and send this out, that Netscope client just sends all ports and protocols, all traffic externally through to Netscope. And if it's not been approved, like if it's not Zoom, Teams, WebEx, etc., then no, that shouldn't be allowed out. There's certain applications that use non-standard TCP and UDP ports. If it's not that, then they shouldn't be allowed out. And then that gives us the ability to start reporting on all of these capabilities, start seeing the risk from a single management console, all those protocols. Then we can start adding in private applications. So if I've got private applications inside of my data centers, inside of my infrastructure as a service, maybe I've uploaded some of these tools to AWS. Maybe I'll start to say, well, why don't I just stitch together Netskope to these various networks? And then because Netskope is connecting to this single location, I can then use Netskope as an access control to say, this particular user can access this private application and can connect to it. I can also start to do remote browser isolation. That means that certain websites, there's just so many out there now, I can't have a yes or no. There's a gray area, uncategorized, miscellaneous, parked domains. They've been registered for 5 years, then they suddenly go active. Well, I'm going to send all of those for a remote browser isolation so that Netskope goes, you can see it, but you're getting a pixel rendering. The actual website is executing inside of Netskope, and the user just gets a pixel rendering of the website. So that there's no risk of downloads of risky malware to the user, all from, again, the single location. And they're stitched together via a single Netskope client. So you just put one single client, one single service on the device that sends all this traffic through, and everything is executed, whether it's yes or no, based on these different controls. Should this, maybe we want to educate the user, provide some coaching, maybe I want to provide additional capabilities here, all from a single client. And then from those on-premise devices, those branch devices, I can integrate via the WAN service edge, those SD-WAN components. So they're not routing from the branch offices into the headquarters and then out. Every single branch office gets to have its own exit point and gets a much better performance as it's connecting to those thousands of different SaaS applications. There is a journey. You can actually stage this, go, I have this requirement, I want to do this at this point. Go with the thing that matters most to you, and you can then get that capability, but you can expand that based on just a license, because you've already done the hard work of deploying that client or integrating that SD-WAN vendor. So you've got a single console, a single agent, so you can do all your management and reporting. It's built on the world's largest security edge. Netskope's got about 50 different data centers that all managed by ourselves. They're not in AWS and beholden to their peering. We have all of our own peering relationships. Netskope's actually the 5th most peered cloud network in the world, after the Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, and something else. This is really powerful. And that performance and that single console is going to reduce friction. The user's like, yeah, this is really quick. I like this. This is good. I'm not going to be trying to bypass stuff. It also reduces risk because you're enabling them to access these different applications, but only stopping the activities that matter. The activities that have the highest risk, you can actually reduce their risk, but increase performance. And by being a single console, a single engine, you're not having to go out market to all these different components. You're reducing costs and operations and complexity. And Netskope's architecture, as I say, we've got 50 different data centers globally. We're expanding all the time. 50 different locations, over 100 billion different transactions every day. Every single data center is also full compute. It is a single pass architecture. So you don't have to go, well, I'm going to connect to Mumbai, but if I want the sandboxing capability, it goes all the way to the US and back. Oh, if I want DLP, it's going to Australia. That's just too slow. Every single data center has full compute capacity. So it is a full single pass architecture for the best performance possible. This allows us to do something different with SSE, something different. That means applying a zero trust architecture, which means that if we're thinking about this highly distributed world where you've got far too many geolocations for your users, they're all working from all their homes. That's hundreds, thousands of different geolocations, hundreds of thousands of different applications. There's too many different variables, but the thing we wanted to protect is the data. That is whether or not we should allow connectivity or protect the data. So think about it as an organism. We have our brain for any organism, which is like what we're trying to protect. Make sure that the brain can keep going so that we can keep operating. We then have a central nervous system so that if I go into the kitchen and I touch a hot pan, I'm going to go, ow, that hurts, and I'll recoil. And that's what the security service edge is doing. It is connected to all those different components, the cloud applications, the websites, the private applications, the non-sender ports, and it can send that context, all the context through a zero trust policy to say, should that happen? Should that happen if I'm going to protect the information that matters? So that security service edge is a nervous system. It gives you visibility into cloud applications, non-standard ports, all ports and protocols. The file's behavior. Is the file misbehaving? Is the data sensitive? Is it a good website or a risky website? Is the user behaving correctly? And is the private application something that they should be accessing as well? And then we're going to get even more context, because it's not just about whether or not the app is sanctioned and is good. Is the application instance okay? But also, what are they doing in these applications? There's good activities like upload, create, edit, record. There's some weird ones like connect, publish, transfer, form, post, send. They've got maybe some risk associated with them. And then there's real risky ones like delete, shut down, reboot. Netskope wants to take in all of this context to allow you to make those rich decisions. And one of those strong contextual decisions is, again, the instance. I want to collaborate. You have so many different departments in your organization that are all trying to collaborate with these applications. And the URL, your traditional web proxy is going to go drive.google.com. That's Google Drive. But it's a problem because there are and I've got a Gmail account. If anyone here has a Gmail account, when they go to Google Drive, they can access their personal one over drive.google.com. If I have a partner instance, it's drive.google.com. So if a partner of yours sends you a link to go, I want to collaborate with you, the URL you're accessing is drive.google.com. I need to make decisions whether it's a partner instance or a personal one. Regardless of this, Netskope uses the APIs in line to say, should this happen and should this or should it not, against multiple different instances. And that becomes really powerful. And then from a data protection perspective, we have things like compliance reasons, intellectual property and privacy. And we see this content in file content, in the metadata and classifications, maybe even images and screenshots. So Netskope integrates its industry-leading DLP to say we've got over 3,000 data identifiers. We've got the ability to do fingerprinting and exact match, and that AI and machine learning classifiers to look for images or even documents like merger and acquisitions or stock allocation documents, NDAs. All this is something that is really hard to do by just built-in policies or fingerprinting because they're all different and they use pretty much business language. But if you throw enough of those NDAs through a machine learning engine, we'll go, yep, that's an NDA. So it puts the onus on the data governance team to protect and specify where those types of files are going, takes the onus away from the user. And how we integrate that into a zero trust policy on that journey of SASE and what it's delivering for you as a business is we get to say, okay, should the app be allowed? Should that Dropbox? Should OneDrive? Should AWS be allowed? And if it is, should that instance, is it a corporate instance? Is it a personal instance? Is it a business partner? And then what about the activity? Should the activity be allowed? Uploads, downloads, deletes. You can delete stuff in your personal instance. You can't delete stuff in your corporate instance. And that's access control and coaching. And that provides the education piece. But we should take in more context. Like, is the data sensitive? And should that data be allowed to be going out? Is the user been good? So we're using user trust now. Should the user be allowed to go out? That's contextual data and threat protection. The thing that makes Netskope different is that we go above and beyond allow and block. We're going to take in network trust and device trust. Every single component in here, we're going to determine whether or not I have confidence in each of these components to apply a trust level to this. And if it doesn't, I can say, okay, well, you can see the variables in this. Is this moving? This is not moving, but okay. So each of these go up and down at some point, and each one has a different level of trust at any one time based on all these different transactions. So if the device trust is high, or if the network trust is low, the user trust is low, the app trust is high, I can start to say, do I allow this? Do I block this? Do I provide some coaching around this? Do I do step-up authentication to say, I want to make sure the human being, his bum is on that seat? Or do I give them ask them to justify their action? That is Netskope's zero trust policy engine that is built in to this portfolio. And what we're doing here is allowing your organizations to be agile, to access the applications they need to be competitive, to make you outsmart and outwit your competitors, and increase that productivity of your workforce tenfold. I'm redefining risk. I'm not saying it's yes or no on websites, but this instance, this activity, this data becomes something I can start to redefine and increase your security. And by being a single console, a single management console, a single engine, and a policy enforcement point with a single engine, a single agent, is going to simplify operations immeasurably, which of course reduces cost. That is everything I've got time for today. I would love to hear your questions. Please let me know what you think. Thank you. I'm Michael Ferguson. Thank you very much.
Okay, Michael, amazing session as always. So guys, we still have like half an hour for Q&A. So please raise your hand if you want to ask any question. I'll go ahead and unmute you. So let me see who has raised hand. Okay, Mr. Anil, I'm going to unmute you. You can go ahead and ask your question now. Anil, go ahead, please. Okay, anyone else wants to ask a question?
Anil has put in a question in the chat I've just seen. Is this collaboration extended to GitHub? Absolutely it is. Netskope has a significant amount of integrations with GitHub for inline capabilities and controls, making sure that different repositories can't be shared with certain people, certain areas, and we can also make sure that certain information isn't uploaded there. We also do have, we've got 3 data planes in India. We don't have a management plane in India, but this is a good time for our customers. This is all ever changing. So if this was something that is hypercritical to you, you speak to your local sales rep and you make sure that they know that this is important to you. And Netskope can absolutely do what they can do to make sure that that's there. Okay. Am I audible? Yes.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. In continuation to that question, Michael, when we deal with the source code, there are Git accounts which are used for personal as well as professional use. We want to segregate the users in such a way that the professional or the official source code cannot be copied onto the personal Git repo. Yes. Is that contextual possible over there? 100%, absolutely, yeah. Netskope can apply instance awareness to, I think it's about 3,000 different applications, and GitHub is one of them. So not even just like a corporate and personal, but you might collaborate with a third-party vendor to help build something, and you want to download from their GitHub, but you don't want to upload to this. Okay. So that's really important that we can understand that, and Netskope absolutely has the ability to do this. Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate your answer and elaborated clarification.
Great. Thanks, Anilji. Ashokji, go ahead, ask your question now. You are next. Ashokji, go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question, please. Okay, hand is down now. Great. So I don't see any other questions on the. Is there any question in the chat? Let me see. Okay, so I think Netskope team is already answering the questions on the chat, and if anybody wants to ask live question, please go ahead, raise your hand. Last chance. Okay, Basil has raised hand. Basil, you are unmuted now. Go ahead, ask your question. Dr. Rajan, you are next. Yeah, Basil, go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So you mentioned on something on zero private access for the applications. Okay, so so there is some component which need to be deployed at the partner ends, whichever the application we want to control.
Yeah. good question.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, but different to traditional VPN, where you have to allow inbound connections. That's a risk under the firewall, is you have to allow inbound. From a zero trust network access or private application control, you install a Netskope publisher in your network. Every single network that you might have, that you want to have applications to, you can then install the Netskope publisher, and it makes an outbound connection to the Netskope cloud. It's an outbound connection over 443, so you only have to have an outbound port opened up on your firewall, and then that connection is established so that they can make a connection from the Netskope cloud. Any of your users connect to the Netskope cloud, they get a yes or a no on whether or not they can access the application, and then they are routed to that publisher in your network via the tunnel that's been established.
Okay, so the concern what I was having is like suppose if I'm taking any SaaS services, okay, for and the partner is not ready to install on the publisher at their cloud. So what are the options available on that? And the second question, what I was having, like suppose in case if my users are sitting inside the premises, okay, so can this application access piece be extended to that user as well? Like I understand if he's sitting on the cloud, he can connect to connector and then he can access in the traditional method what we have for VPN. But in case if he's sitting on-prem, so similar thing can be done like user level micro-segmentation. So there are two queries what I have for now.
Yeah, great questions as well. So the first one is that if they didn't want to install a publisher on their network, it isn't going to work. Like, unfortunately, you do need to have that publisher in there to make the connection to the Netskope cloud. If the user is on premise already and the application is internal, then they might not need to connect out. They would already have access to that application. So that's the other thing. If you wanted Netskope to deliver the access controls for internal users to internal applications, we have got that kind of capability roadmap, and we do have an internal data plane available. It's just going to get the additional capabilities sort of coded up and put into beta, but it is a roadmap item at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Basil. Sorry, I had to mute you because there was a lot of noise coming in, but great question. Yeah. Dr. Rajan, please go ahead, ask your question now. Dr. Rajan is our new member in Chennai chapter, very senior individual. Dr. Rajan, go ahead, please.
Very happy afternoon, Michael, and thank you, Vikas. I hope I'm audible to you.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things. There's a couple of things. One, when we are converging the single, the pointed solutions, does it not lead to the single point of failure? Number one. Number two. Number two is, organizations like Yahoo, where the videos are being pushed, they use a content delivery network. It is perhaps more optimal for them to look at commissioning the technology that we're talking about, where they need to have multiple lean-based clusters that need to take care of them. But in India, the digitalization initiatives across various states, where the people data is enormously getting pumped in now. I want to see that this is a very right use case for multiple states where they need to get connected, to become interoperable, and start exchanging information across the states to become the first point of use case, which could probably bring in a lot more confidence on the business units to start looking at this. Thank you.
So let's go with a single point of failure to begin with. So I agree, it makes total sense. And therefore, that's why Netskope has 3 different data planes in India. We recognize that we don't want to say you got to send everything through a single, one single location. So we have multiple redundancies in each of our data planes in each data center. And we have 50 globally. So if one of them goes down, you just get routed to another one. And in India, we have 3 already. So that's definitely something we want to make sure that is available. And as we mentioned, every single data plane has full capacity to deliver everything for each one of those, each one of those capabilities, whether it's sandbox or exact match, AI, machine learning, data protection. So yeah, you're not even going to lose any of the capabilities even if something did go down. But each one of those data planes does have built-in, redundancy in there as well. You'll have to repeat the second question because it was there was a bit of crackling on the line, but hopefully that answered your first question.
I think that's that because you would have built in multiple redundancies to address that requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's super important. Like, we're talking about network as a service, then we've got to be high availability, and that means going through all of the compliance checks and all the stringent controls that you would expect when you're building a network. We have to do that. We have to take this on and go take that serious. And if you have any specific compliance standards that you would expect us to adhere to, yeah, we can provide that to you and showcase where we're at with each of those components.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Mr. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃𝗀, go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question now.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Prakash, and good session, Michael. The converged model instead of the point solution is definitely encouraging, and it provide a confidence that we will be able to really provide security end to end. My question is more towards on the device trust and the network trust. Are we still referring to the native and known network and known devices only, or it includes 𝗲𝗏𝗰𝗂𝗀 as well, on third-party network as well?
Yeah, like that's great. Like that slide I have with all the various different network trust and device trust. This is something we take really serious, and we have posture checking right now. But Netskope's looking to do even more in this space, because you're going to have IoT, OT systems where they're not on standard operating systems. They're not on, does it have the certificate installed? I want to see baseline behaviors. I want to see how this operates. And I'll take that into consideration to determine whether or not that device is behaving correctly, whether it's inside the network, outside the network. And based on that behavior, based on that, do I have trust enough? Do I have confidence enough in that device to say that that is connecting to the right location? It hasn't been compromised. And that's something that we do a little bit right now, especially with posture checking. Has it got the certificate? Is it in this domain? Is it in these networks? Is it outside the network? Have different policies based on internal, external, in this geolocation. If one of your users was outside of India, you might go, okay, well, I want to have different policies to this because they're suddenly outside the country and I don't really know what's going on. We're in lockdown. So you might have policies around this. That's possible, but we want to go even further than that and then expand on our ability to determine whether or not I believe this network is behaving, that device is behaving, and do I have confidence in that, and should I trust?
Got it. So to summarize that, for the known device, known network, and native to the corporate, and the network we have already signed up with, those are all straightforward. But anything outside of that, to still have to be handled on.
But also, so that's interesting. So I'm working from home, and I have a consistent set of policy structure, whether I'm at home or I'm in the network, because my traffic goes through the Netskope client, which then that's all ports and protocols. Everything external, everything internal goes to one client that goes to this blob in the cloud, and it applies all of my policies from this. That happens exactly the same as if I'm in the network. So you're getting a consistent set of policies, completely consistent, regardless of whether or not I'm at home or in the network. That's really powerful. Now we want to take into additional trust levels of whether or not my device has been behaving weird, or it looks like 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 isn't installed, that he isn't operating on this machine. But that's additional context that we can build in. But that consistency is hyper important.
Got it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Let's take the last question, I believe. Charanjit, go ahead, ask your question now. Sharijit, go ahead, unmute yourself and you can ask your question now.
Yeah, good morning, Vikas. Thanks for giving the opportunity. So I have
Thank
two
you.
questions. The first one is how do you coach your users on policy violations? What are the modes of coaching in real time?
Fantastic.
And-
So I love
Yeah.
that question. It's really important. But to go to the next question first. But
Yeah, and
wait.
the second question is, what is train your own classifier?
What classifier?
Train your own classifier, 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗀.
Okay. Is that from a data perspective? Data protection perspective?
Yes, product specific question from Netskope.
Cool. Okay. So coaching, Netskope has the ability to apply multiple different coaching pages. You can just build as many as you want, and you apply them to certain policy types. So I have one that when a user uploads data to a cloud storage collaboration webmail app that is of a risk score below 60 out of 100, so it's kind of a high risk application, I do a pop-up and I say, hey, did you know that this is a high risk application? We actually have a set of alternatives and I'll point them to the library of applications that they can go to. I also have another one that says the application you're uploading to is unsanctioned, because you can tag apps as sanctioned, unsanctioned, or marketing sanctioned. You're uploading to an unsanctioned application. For this type of activity, it's very specific. This application is available from a data perspective. I might want to say, if you want to upload this data that contains PII data to a non-corporate instance, you have to provide a justification. You actually have to type in something to say why. Why do I want this to happen? And that puts the onus on the user to say, oh, okay, I have to make this. There must be a real reason, because that'll be recorded. And what you find is about 90% of users see this coaching page and go, whoops, I didn't know, cancel, and they'll use the right tool. That ability to provide inline security awareness training and education to increase the risk maturity of your users, super powerful to increase that maturity of your workforce. The question on the train your own classifiers. So we have the ability to do fingerprinting. We can do exact data matching. We even have the new engine to build your own machine learning classifier. So we can actually throw, so if you had certain documents, you were like, these documents are really sensitive to us, and I don't know, maybe it's something specific to your industry. And we have about 25 different machine learning classifiers now. But if there was something specific to you, we can build one for you and just throw it through our machine learning engine, and it'll build a classifier, and then you can apply a policy to say this type of information should only go to corporate instances. And I see this going to a third party or a personal instance, not a chance. Or provide a block on a personal instance and a coaching page on a partner instance. That type of ability is really powerful, integrating that build your own classifier with that instance awareness.
Great, I think that's about it. We do not have anybody else who has raised hand, so we still have like 12 minutes to go. Going last, guys, if you want to ask any other question, please raise your hand now, else we will go to the closure. Okay, nobody has raised hand. Great. So Michael, great session as always. Really appreciate you taking out time. Let me share the secret as people are asking for the certificate. So if you want a participation certificate like this, guys, what you got to do is go to EliteCISOs website, click on events, click on upcoming events. You will come to this page. Click on CPA certificate. This will take you to a Google form where you can download your certificate. Put your email address over here, put your full name, and the password to download the certificate is 𝗲𝗄𝗏, SYFIRMA. Okay, SCYFIRMA, 𝗲𝗄𝗏. Why? Because next week we are doing a session with 𝗲𝗄𝗏 for a very first time. 𝗲𝗄𝗏 is a company around digital footprinting, and also they can talk about how do you detect the attack surface and all. So that's going to be a very interesting session. Yeah, so registrations are open. You can simply click over here and register for this session next week. Last but not the least that everybody is kind of waiting for is the legacy wheel of fortune that we run every time. So we are going to run it 3 times. OK, now the first one is for everyone who registered. So you see about 339 people in this wheel of fortune. I will spin it once. If your name comes, go to the chat and say, yes, you are here. OK, so I'm spinning it now. For the first one, there are total 3 giveaways this time. So the first one goes to Mr. 𝗃𝗲𝗀 from CRIS. Mr. 𝗃𝗲, if you are there in the session, go to the chat and say yes. Now you will see how different the wheel of fortune is going to look like, because I'm going to delete and remove all these entries. And next entry is going to be for all the people who support 𝗓𝗓𝐶ISOs on LinkedIn by either liking or commenting on the LinkedIn post, right, for this specific session. So every week we post about the session and we request that you go ahead and like the session so that it gets good visibility. Now about 96 people liked Netskope session LinkedIn post. So all those people are here who support 𝗓𝗓𝐶ISOs. Now I'm going to run it for 2 times, right? So if your name comes again, go to the chat and say yes. So the second one goes to Mr. Darshak Solanki. Mr. Darshak, if you are there, if you are watching, if you are a Darshak for this webinar, go to the chat and say yes. The third and the last one is going to Mr. Akash Bhutani from Delhi chapter. Akash, if you are there in the session, go to the chat and say yes. That's about it, I believe. We covered everything and we still have 9 minutes to go. That's how I like it. Start on time and finish on time. So thanks everyone for joining in. Thanks Netskope team. Thanks Michael. Been wonderful session. We will put the recording on the EliteCISO website. Okay, guys, thanks for now. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.